Okay, now in this demonstration, we will take a look at how you can adjust the scaling demands for any given resource. And again, in this case, I'm using databases as an example. So this is something that would be applicable to other types of resources, but it just gives you an indication of how you can adjust for changes when you are dealing with cloud-based resources. So earlier, I created two databases, and within each database, you can still specify the performance characteristics based on what you anticipate the demand will be. But you don't always know what the demand will be. So you might have to take a best guess and set a particular configuration and then see what happens. And that's fine. Maybe you do that in some cases and you make adjustments as you go. But there are options for certain types of resources that allow you to make those adjustments automatically on the fly, if you will. And in the case of databases, at least in Microsoft's Azure service, known as elastic pools, and they allow you to pool the resources of your databases so that if one is being overutilized, it can quite literally borrow resources from one that is being underutilized and vice versa. So, in other words, they can share the resources of the pool and adjust their performance characteristics dynamically. So from my home page here, I have both databases. So TestDB was the first one I created, and TestDB2 was simply the second. Now I can actually click on either one to create an elastic pool. It doesn't really matter. But from within the property page, it does give you an option to set up an elastic pool. So currently it says no elastic pool, but I can just click on this link and here I can create a new elastic pool. So let's go ahead and click on that. And all I have to do is give it a name. So let's just call this DB Pool 1. And it is already on the only server that I have configured. Okay, that's fine. You might have more than one server, in which case you could choose a different one. But with respect to the compute and storage now, it tells me that it is based on an eDTU value. We did discuss the DTU in the previous demonstration, which is database throughput unit. An eDTU is an elastic database throughput unit. So I can now configure the pool, and I still have the same options in terms of the DTU and the maximum size, and I just have to move the sliders. Again, I'm using a free trial, so I'm a little bit limited here, but in a normal situation, you can just set whatever value you like, and then you can specify the maximum size. But this now is for the pool. So all of the databases in the pool will be able to draw from these settings. And once again, you have these preset configurations of basic, standard, and premium. Again, premium is not available simply because I'm in a free trial. But all I have to do now is go to the databases page, click on add databases, and there are my two databases. Add those in, and that's it. Now, I can still set limits on a per database setting. So in other words, I can still specify that any one database will not have access to any more than a certain value if I want to, but that's up to you. You don't have to do that. As it stands, these two databases are now able to draw from the resources of the pool. And as mentioned, if one of them starts to become overutilized, it can quite literally borrow resources from the other, assuming that they are available. But that's the whole idea, is to ensure that you do have enough resources in the pool. So when you have a lot of databases and you aren't really certain as to what the demands will be for any given database, rather than having to try to figure out what each setting should be, you can just create the pool and allow the databases to draw from that pool. So as soon as I apply that, I can simply create that now and allow the databases to adjust dynamically with respect to the performance characteristics. So again, this is very useful with respect to capacity. You can try to plan everything out as best as possible, but ultimately you really don't know until your databases or your other resources are in production. So it can take a little time to figure out what the settings might be. But doing something like this pool-based approach allows you to not have to worry about that so much. And again, I do want to stress that this is only one example using databases, but there are other resources that can be configured in similar types of pools so that if any particular resource is being overtaxed, it has the ability to draw resources from somewhere else. And that's the idea of trying to find the best balance in terms of what your capacity is going to be with respect to the resources they will be able to access.